Look, I think, the first thing is, this basically breaks every single rule except for it's nice and short. So I guess this is, again, one of those, when this was written, this was far more effective than it is now. But, we talk about whether it's, the subject line to first line being so important, and we waste our entire first line talking about us. We, I'm, we work, we do this, I'm this, and no one cares, right? So you've done an intro line, which is a waste. You've also asked them to do, to give you work before you give you value before you deliver value, because you're asking them to direct you somewhere else, something you should already know. And again, this is something that might have worked a few years ago, but it's definitely, I wouldn't see this having very much success today.
Yeah, I agree. Hate the lead in with the introduction and just the lack of homework, to ask someone to direct you to the right person. But, furthermore, this, doesn't follow can spam rules. So, it just kind of ends with cheers and then my name, so if it's got, the address and the opt out rules, you need to obviously account for that as well. So, but yeah, I think you touched on everything else.
And so the other thing is, like, this call to action is kind of very unclear too, because it's actually asking for two different things. It's actually asking to be directed to someone, and then also kind of talking about the value prop, right? So something more valuable to incorporate into your events or whatever it is. So, that's and I see that a lot, where people they sign off with a call to action, but it kind of asks three different things to do. You need a single call to action, one thing you want them to do, and that's what needs to be clear.
Yeah, and in your follow-ups, you can, switch gears a little bit, right? So if your first call to action in your first email, and maybe even it's the same in your second email, and you're not getting a response, well, don't keep trying to, push that down their throats. Switch gears a little bit. That maybe that third email is where you kind of highlight a different benefit perhaps, and use, a slightly different call to action. All right, so this one is a little scattered. Again, it leads in with that intro. I think we're probably going to repeat this theme throughout because I see this pretty commonly. We'll try to find some new elements here, but beyond that intro, kind of talks about taking a stab in the dark based on their online profile. Pretty generic. Not a whole lot of research, obviously, when you're mentioning something like that. And then again, wants to be directed to the person responsible, which, not a strong lead in. You should have that done already. But the other thing here, I guess, is kind of the that call to action to then, hop on a call. And you touched on it too, Damien, with the last one where there's multiple calls to action. So not only can we hop on a call, but then, put me in touch with the right person again, right? So you mentioned that twice. So pretty weak. Nothing stands out about this email for me.
Yeah, so I'm going to focus on the call to action real quick, because again, it's asking for you to do multiple things, and so the asking for a phone call is a big ask. But where I have seen this done, this is an old technique, and I think it was like the Selling the Veto series. That's VITO, which meant very important top officer. And the idea was that you would go as high as possible and have them push you down, which is kind of what this breakthrough email template really where it came from. But this was the good old days. This was 15 years ago. We were talking about physical letters. And so what you would do, you'd get a new, got a new territory. You'd find out the chief tech, if you're selling the CTOs, let's say, you'd find the CTOs and you put a handwritten letter together, and you'd actually tell them you were going to call them on Wednesday at, 9:15. Right, and then Wednesday at 9:20, and Wednesday, and each one you actually have a corresponding spreadsheet, and you'd actually call them at the exact time you said in the mail. That could be powerful, right? Like if that's you want to turn away to use it, say, look, I'd like to, if you get rid of all the wishy-washy stuff, like I think you could possibly taking a stab in the dark nonsense and just say, look, based on what I see, you look like the kind of person that has these kind of problems, that sort of thing. I'm going to call you on Wednesday at 9:15 to figure out whether we're a good fit or not. And then actually have a calendar, like actually have a task in your CRM says call X prospect exactly 9:15 on next Wednesday. That could be a very powerful kind of thing. But boy, that's going to take a lot of work, right? It's a lot of effort for email early in the sequence, right? Maybe that would be, yeah.
And you can only send that to one person, right? Because then the next email, you've got to change that time. Because
absolutely. But they're already doing this, right? Because they're saying they've got a blank here for a time and date. So they're doing the same thing. So they're saying they're going to do that. This is already a one-to-one. But actually, I'm just saying make it a little stronger. But yes, That would be something I would only do on a very small campaign because you're going to have to schedule that timeout. There's a lot of coordination on your end. This is not going to be an automated thing, right? It's going to be one single email going out. And frankly, I think you're better off coming up with more compelling copy and sending out to 1,000 people and letting the ones that are interested get back to you is a better chance of success than doing individual emails like this.
All right. So for this one, it is short and to the point, which obviously that works out well, but it does lead in with, that introduction, which kind of kills it from the beginning. I kind of like how, it can, I guess, lead you down this one line value prop. I'm a fan of that, but there's kind of this, wanted to learn how you handle this and then show you what we're working on. Are you available for a brief call? I think, again, a big ask. There's no real value here. I'm not a fan of trying to book a call on that first cold email. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Damien, but I think it's fine for maybe, a third follow-up or something, just to switch gears, but I'm not a big fan of that right out of the gate.
I totally agree. So look, this is by far the best of the three so far, because at least at this point, there's no wishy-washy. It's to the point, but also it presupposes that you've done a little bit of work, right? And you're actually going after the people in a certain, specific company type, so a specific industry or company type. You're talking about a value prop, so this is so much better than the first two. But yeah, again, that's a big ask asking for a phone call. Like you're asking for someone for their undivided attention for 15, 20 minutes. Like that's a lot. That's a lot to ask for without you actually earning it. So I think everything up until then was actually pretty good. I would just soften that call to action to be something along the lines of, ask them a question, so maybe you hit that. I want to learn how you handle X companies at company name and show you what we're working on, which I don't love to show you what we're working on. But then the call to action could be a very specific question. Do you have problem B, right? Or how do you, when you handle problem B, do you use X or Y, right? And then your call to action or what you want is you just want to start that conversation.
All right. So for this one, it gets a little long. I'm not a big fan of that, but I think the big takeaway here, besides the length, is just how many I's and we's I see. I mean, quickly scanning this, I'm seeing 10 references that either start with I or we. I'm so and so. I work in XYZ. We launched. I was looking at your profile. I mean, it's 4 times before it even says your profile, which obviously isn't even that personal, but, try to replace every I and we with a you, because that helps shape the kind of the benefit angle of your email.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just way too long. I'm just looking at it on the screen. I don't want to read it. So I mean, let alone if I was actually your target market and it came on and it was kind of weak like this, you would not be getting 15 minutes of my time. So, but you probably wouldn't get me to get to the point where I even read that sentence. All right, because once I see I'm this and work for this company and we do this, I'm out. So yeah. And I think that's it. That first line is like, I don't want to repeat it every single one, but it needs to be repeated kind of. Like it is so important. Like people are looking for a reason to trash your email. They're looking for a reason to push delete. They're looking for a reason to push spam. And if you start off with, I am this and we do this and we're this company, best case scenario, they say, oh, this is a sales email, and they just delete it. I just, it's just the likelihood that someone's going to read a sentence about you and then say, oh, I'm so interested in this stranger I know nothing about. Let me continue to read this thing when I've got 82 other unread emails in my inbox. It's just so low. It's just such a horrible way to start the conversation, and you're just not going to get the engagement you need.
It's funny you said that you haven't read it. I still have not yet read it. I looked at it. It was too much text. And I just noticed a bunch of eyes standing out.
Right.
So let me just count those real quick. So yeah, I still have not read this, which I think tells you something.
That's not a good sign. So yeah.